Here's Johnny.
I'll be back.
And you will know my name is the Lord.
I'm walking here. I'm walking here.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Groovy.
Deep beneath a bleak and dismal Cineplex, hidden beneath its murky toilets, lies the headquarters of the most cynical podcasters of all time, the Box Office Pulp. A meeting will come to order. The Box Office Pulp is now in session. It is the purpose of this show to align our infamous forces against the powers of decency and common sense to defeat them, leaving us the rulers of the world. To do this, we have gathered the four most ruthless villains on Earth. The sinister mind of James Lewis. The awesome MB.
At last, Batnavia will be mine.
The cunning Mike Napier.
To evil.
And the super intelligent computer android Cody Alft, a.k.a. the Flexo. We're gathered here today for one specific purpose. To kill the man who killed Tim Burton's Superman. Anyways, welcome to Box Office Pulp.
And his name was John Peters.
I'm still a little sad that we didn't get to see that train wreck.
Oh, we'll get to see the documentary. Don't worry.
I know, that's cool and everything, but it's not the genuine article.
That makes me wish I could just travel, nay, slide to parallel universi, like 90s Jerry O'Connell, just to see weird versions of superhero movies.
That'd be the best. That's how exclusively I would use that power. I would check out Tim Burton's Batman 3, and I would see Tim Burton's Superman.
See Leonardo DiCaprio as Robin.
Leo. See Jake Gyllenhaal in Batman Begins, just to see what the hell that would have been.
No. If we're doing alternate Batman Begins castings,
Cillian Murphy,
Ashton Kutcher.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
I don't know anything, I swear to God. Swear to me.
That's your Ashton Kutcher, man.
That's what I was thinking, man. I mean, no offense. But really?
To be fair, it's Ashton Kutcher.
Does anyone have an Ashton Kutcher?
Is he a hobo now?
Possibly.
Like he's holding a bindle with like a Batman mask on.
Have you seen Ashton Kutcher lately?
No, actually. Someone should find him. I'm worried about him now.
He's been on TV.
He's
Who
one of
knows
the
when they filmed that? That could have been months ago.
He's banging Mila Kunis.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, he
God
made
bless.
a baby with her. So
Allegedly.
yes, allegedly. Well, he's apparently made babies with a lot of women. Why are we talking about this man?
Good question. Anyways, if you're just tuning into the podcast and use my dramatic narration, we're here today to talk about the films that never came to be.
The aborted films, if you will.
That's exactly what we're going to title this, and then get all the fans, because everyone loves hearing the word abortion.
Yeah,
that draws in the crowds like nothing.
Aborts, and that'll be really helpful.
Tumblr's going to love it when we post this episode.
Personally, I'm pro-director.
I feel this joke has gone far enough. So, how about that Jurassic Park with dinosaur men? But, seriously, we had this idea just because in the news recently there's been the idea that they're going to make a proper Alien 3. Like, we're going to get a movie that ignores Alien 3, we're going to get a movie that ignores Alien 4, and we're going to get Hicks and Sigourney Weaver back, and everything's going to be hunky-dory with that franchise. Which seems
and
weird.
Adult Newt.
Yes, we all just assume this would never happen. No, I haven't heard anything about her involvement. Don't get people's hopes up.
I assume.
We should all assume. Assume every...
Well,
Emily
personally,
Blunt as Adult Newt.
Oh.
I assume that Ron Perlman is going to come back, but as a recast character.
That'd be amazing. They would have all my money twice.
He'll play Winona Ryder's character.
Oh, man, that'd be cool.
Actually, I imagine him, like, playing the Xenomorph. Like, he just has these really fake-looking rubber parts all over.
No, it's just Ron Perlman. He opens his mouth, another Ron Perlman snaps at you.
And even crumpier Ron Perlman comes out.
It's a little cigar.
But I don't know about you guys, but ever since I was, like, I don't know, 11, I've had a weird fascination with following movies that just have never seen the light of day. Like, I was there when there was dial-up websites saying that there was going to be a Batman 5 starring George Clooney. Like, that's how vivid a memory I have of following productions that just never saw the light of day.
What was the title of that one?
Batman Triumphant.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
It was apparently going to have the Scarecrow as played by Jeff Goldblum, and it was going to be darker in tone, but then there are also, like...
Fear finds a way.
That'd be terrifying.
There's also, like, a conflicting report that it was actually going to be even lighter in tone than Batman and Robin and have Batmite in it. So,
Yeah. Well, also, Schumacher did approach Howard Stern to play the Scarecrow at one point.
also, Schumacher desperately tried to pitch Batman Year One right as Warner Brothers was courting Darren Aronofsky to do Batman Year One. So, Schumacher really tried to, like, make up for what he did.
Fun fact, Schumacher's the reason Batman Begins exists, because he pitched Batman Year One.
Well, he's the reason Batman Begins exists by proxy of making Batman and Robin anyway.
There's that,
He's the
too.
martyr of Batman.
We're saying he killed Batman to bring Batman back, so we could also blame him for The Dark Knight Rises, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he killed Batman twice and brought him back once.
He's like the kingpin. He has to tear down Batman to bring him back up.
See, that's why I say the only way to truly bring Batman back to his peak is to have Schumacher return.
He's the League of Shadows. He's the one-man League of Shadows, and Batman is his Gotham.
It would close the cycle.
And playing the lead role, Nicolas Cage.
I'd watch it.
The night.
He still has the mustache from Kick-Ass.
Not the bats!
They're in my eyes.
This won't bring back your fucking justice!
See, this is why these movies need to exist, because I want that to be movies. These films, these cinematic adventures.
But yeah, speaking of Nick Cage as DC superheroes, it doesn't get any weirder with, like, aborted... Yes, I used the word again. With
MB.
He's been waiting all day to do this.
with just dejected superhero films than Superman Reborn / Superman Lives, which was a production that was started in 1996. It was the first Superman movie that Warner Brothers commissioned after getting DC Comics as an entity. So that was their first stab at this character.
Was murdering him.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, they originally commissioned a script from, I think, Dan Gilroy, and then they were doing, like, several drafts of it, and it was getting really campy and really stupid. It was based on the death of Superman, you know, the comic at the time, and eventually Kevin Smith came in, he did a draft, then Tim Burton came in, and he took over, and it became really horrible, and there's a lot of concept art online of just Frankensteinian Superman and like all this weird stuff that just didn't make any sense and would have been the most colossal train wreck ever, and I really want to see it so bad.
Right? The big Arctic spider?
The pictures of him online in the actual Superman costume are kind of awesome. Like, I would have loved to actually see Cage as Superman, not even in like in an ironic way. I think he actually would have made like a decent Superman in a weird way.
He loves Superman so much. I mean, he'd still probably murder the role, but at least he tried really hard at it.
Yeah, he would have been like good in a really horrible movie that essentially raped everything involved with the character, but it was kind of interesting. Like seeing him actually try on the suit and stuff, it's like I could see it.
I also like how they went with the long hair version.
Yeah.
Nice.
Superman's mullet.
Yeah, he was gonna like have the full-on mullet and everything, even as Clark Kent. Like he looks. If you see pictures of him, like in the footage where he's rehearsing like the Clark Kent scenes, he looks exactly like Tommy Wiseau with glasses. It's kind of amazing.
No, all things considered, the Kevin Smith draft actually isn't that bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've read it before. It's actually pretty solid.
Yeah, well, the Kevin Smith draft went through so many phases because the Kevin Smith draft was first commissioned as a straight-up Superman movie, and then John Peters took a look at it and said, no. And there's like a long rant on YouTube everybody's seen by now about like all the weird changes he wanted to make to it and like all the strange stuff that happened. Like apparently the first script revolved around Superman dying at the hands of Doomsday. Then he confesses his love to Lois as he's dying, and then Lois miraculously is pregnant with his child. The child grows up and becomes the new Superman. Like, that was what the first draft was. They apparently went back to that when Burton came on and also made him, like, a Frankenstein monster, essentially. Like, when he came back from the dead, like, he came back and he didn't have any memory of who he is, and, like, he's flying around in a weird, like, Zod costume, and he looks half dead. He looks like a Tim Burton, like, essentially Edward Scissorhands.
He's flying around in a regeneration suit, which is one of the best effect suits I've ever seen and never got into film. Steve Johnson made it, and it's pretty fucking beautiful.
It is, and it looks terrible for Superman. It's such a weird clash. Like, it's just amazing, like, what they could have done with this movie, but everything is so wrong for Superman.
It could have been a cool Zod costume.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible to see, like, all the little parts that made up this movie, but it is by far, I think, the most infamous, almost superhero movie of all time. Like, the next to Cameron's Spider-Man.
James, I'm sure you have a few things to say about Cameron's Spider-Man.
It is.
Please tell me a tale.
Cameron's Spider-Man. See, long ago in the far-off decade known as the 90s, a man named James Cameron came to the Canon Film Group with a dream. Okay, so I'm curious. Has anyone else here ever read the original James Cameron script treatment for Spider-Man?
I read
some of it.
I read
a version of the treatment which had, like, storyboards attached to it, but I didn't really. I only read so much of it. Like, I really kind of only got the gist of it, where it was like, okay, Electro is a businessman.
Carlton Strand, you mean?
Yes, Carlton Strand. Like, at some point he nearly murders Mary Jane, and Peter shouts, like, "I'll freaking kill you." You know,
no, I'll kill you, you fat fuck.
Oh, yes.
Because Carlton Strand is just the Kingpin with Electro's powers. Like, the description in the script is just the Kingpin. And so no, there were two completely different scripts for the Spider-Man movie James Cameron was going to make. One is actually a treatment actually written by James Cameron. The other was written by a completely different dude, but James Cameron put his name on it because he was so proud of that motherfucker. And we'll get to both. Now, this James Cameron script treatment is one of the most tonally bizarre attempts at a superhero movie I have ever seen. Like, if you think Man of Steel was a weird interpretation of who Superman is, James Cameron's Spider-Man would have been rated R. Spider-Man killed people and dropped F-bombs.
Yeah, wasn't what's his name, Edward Furlong, supposed to, like, be the lead?
I think they were courting Furlong and Leonardo DiCaprio at the time.
Yeah.
I think.
See, the only testing I ever heard about was
it earlier than that? I can't remember.
Well, I think as the project went along, like, they started looking at other.
Yeah.
Because I think that script was, like, around for a while. They really wanted to make this piece of shit.
I mean, actually, if you really want to go back, at one point, very first original, when Cameron first came on, he wanted Michael Biehn. Then he was looking at Michael Biehn for Peter Parker for some reason. Then it became Furlong. Then at the very end, Leo was a thing, and he was
I
think it was just every young dude he ever worked with.
Yeah, I think the last interpretation of Spider-Man that was in development under Cameron was in 1996, because I remember I was a kid and I was in a store where they were selling copies of Wizard.
Oh, their mock posters.
Yeah, they're mock posters, and one of them had Leo DiCaprio in the fake Spider-Man poster.
Yeah, they were making that Wizard was making posters based on the rumors of movies and stuff, and
yeah. There was also a weird one for a movie that I'm pretty sure was never actually existed, which was something called Batman Genesis. Like it had like 90s Catwoman in it or something.
I like that 90s wizard was just the pre-internet.
Pretty much. It was like, ain't it cool news, like on the page.
But yeah, this treatment is really bizarre. It's incredibly mean-spirited. Like,
Okay.
Spider-Man is, like, even before he gets powers, Peter is just an angry little shit of a kid. Like, he's basically John Connor as Spider-Man.
Yeah, and isn't he like a super perverted too? Like he spies on Mary Jane, like all the time.
And not like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man spied on Mary Jane. I mean, like, I think there's like a scene of him looking like through her blinds and shit.
Cameron's idea of Spider-Man's powers was puberty.
Yeah.
So
isn't one of those drafts have him waking up?
Yes.
At the sheets covered in webs, like he wet dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the organic web shooters first came from, because he was going to have tiny penises on his wrists that shot goo whenever he saw pretty girls. Because subtext.
Also, isn't that the script where it starts with like a really creepy shot of Spider-Man upside down, full faced in the camera?
Yes.
Like they describes it where it's like featureless eyes just staring back at the audience. It's like what are you trying to say, man?
It's very early 90s in that they were trying to make Spider-Man terrifying. This was the Batman approach to Spider-Man.
David Cronenberg's Spider-Man.
Very, very much so.
That would make the dick
I'm
make more
actually
sense.
Thinking about like the treatment that I read for it, it reminds me the most of like a weird RoboCop.
Kinda.
Except it features Spider-Man.
Sorry, I just want to back up for 1 second. Cronenberg's Spider-Man. Long live the Spidey sense as he pulls out a bunch of webbing from his stomach.
Oh, God.
Mysterio is seducing Peter Parker.
Who would read a ragtag paper like the Daily Bugle?
But yeah, the signature moment of this screenplay for everyone is the scene where Spider-Man fucks Mary Jane.
The seductive spider dance.
For context of how awful this reads on the page, they really play up the fact that Mary Jane is very broken and abused and comes from a dysfunctional family, and she's desperately lonely, and she sees Spider-Man as a friend. So upon seeing that for the first time in his life, a woman he cares for and respects trusts him, he comes by her house, grabs her, swings her to a bridge, webs her to the wall, and then more or less rapes her.
Well, no, there's more to it than that even. He does a seductive mating dance where he essentially like does the Batusi in front of him.
Yes.
In front of her.
Like he does a instinctual tribal dance that hypnotizes her into consent.
So it dovetails into Spider-Man 3 territory.
It dovetails into Catwoman territory. Like he's literally part spider or something.
It's like one of the most perverse things I've ever seen in a movie script. It's like, why is Spider-Man evil now?
I like how this is essentially the 1960s animated Spider-Man meme Spider-Man.
Pretty much.
Yes. This may have been where it originated from. We don't know.
And the punchline to that, going back into how mean-spirited this movie is, the end of the movie is Peter revealing himself to MB.
Spider-Man, no,
put it away. I'm covered in dicks.
Fruity and slip.
The end of the movie is Spider-Man revealing himself to MJ. And remember the scene in Revenge of the Nerds where the dude in the knight's armor is fucking the chick, and then she lifts it up and sees that it's him, and she screams? That's how it's played. Like, oh my god, I fucked Peter, no! Because nothing good can be in this Spider-Man movie.
To be be fair, given the way he treated her on the bridge, I'd react that way regardless of who he was under the mask.
So I'm a little confused. I always thought that Arnold Schwarzenegger was being lined up to play Doc Ock, and he was going to be the main.
That's the second script.
Uh...
Here's the one I love talking about more than any script I have ever read.
Oh, yeah. Everyone lock yourselves in. We're in for a ride.
I have read good scripts. I do not love as much as this. The Okie Dokie Draft.
I'm so fucking excited.
Okay. So this, unlike the Cameron draft, which is a treatment, this is a full script, and it is delightful. In this script, Dr. Octopus, who would have been played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you can tell the role is written for him.
Did he write it with an accent? What are you doing, Peter Parker? No! It's
hard to explain. It's just, he says Arnold things. And that'll become apparent in a minute. So in this version, Otto Octavius is a professor at Peter's college, because I believe this begins with Peter starting college. And he becomes Dr. Octopus when there's a giant nuclear explosion at the Empire State University labs, which fuses. Oh no, they do something really bizarre, which is he doesn't have tentacles. The explosion just fuses metal to him. And because science, he can control the metal pipes that are attached to him.
Wait, it's Magneto-Walk?
Yes.
Hold up.
Oh my god, there was basis for that.
He's like a goddamn porcupine? Like he's just covered in shrapnel?
Yes, and this also radiates the spider that then bites Peter and turns him into Spider-Man.
No, this is the one thing I actually remember from that draft. It doesn't irradiate the spider. It irradiates a fly, which the spider then eats and becomes irradiated.
Because that made to me more complicated.
It couldn't be point A to B. That'd be weird and boring. Let's throw some flies in there.
Can I just say, I love whenever Arnold is lined up to play a villain in a comic book movie, it's a scientist.
Exactly.
It just makes sense.
That's him in front of a college class, like beefy dude in this like professor's suit, and he has these glasses on.
Ever since Junior.
And I like how if Arnold Schwarzenegger is playing a scientist, you know there's going to be some sort of tragic accident. You would have ever thought this would happen to me, the muscle-bound bad guy. No!
Why is this baby growing inside of my body?
It's not a tumor.
Seriously, I love how because of Junior, when you think mad science, you think Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, Peter in this draft is pretty much Peter Parker, as we know him, but the thing that's bizarre is the supporting cast. Peter's love interest in this movie is Liz Allen.
Because they went super comic book accurate with that.
Well, that's the thing. He has 3 classmates, Liz Allen, Flash Thompson, and a character they invented for the movie to be his best friend. Because I don't have confirmation about this, but I'm 90% sure the screenwriter only read the first 3 issues of Spider-Man. Because there's lots of weird early Spider-Man crap in here.
Like, at some point, does he, like, go after a space shuttle or something?
I don't think so, but, like I said, Liz Allen is treated like his love interest. Like, there's no, like, real superheroing in the movie. And here's the thing. Uncle Ben doesn't die until the 3rd act.
Where just hang around?
Yes, where he is killed by Wiener, Doc Ock's henchman.
Wait.
Wiener?
Wiener? Wait, is it just so Arnold Schwarzenegger can say Wiener?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly why it's in there.
Wiener, what are you doing?
Dr. Octopus has an Otis-like bumbling henchman named Wiener, who he sends to murder Peter Parker after Spider-Man refuses to help him rule the world, and he accidentally kills Uncle Ben, and that's how Uncle Ben dies.
But he's a college professor. Why does he have a henchman?
Yeah, what?
Even when he's just a college professor, he has Wiener lurking around.
He has Wiener lurking around.
And my favorite affectation for Dr. Octopus is his catchphrase is okie dokie, which he says in every sentence. And the way it is spelled out on the page is okie, exclamation point, dokie, exclamation point. And now I will have my revenge on you, Spider-Man. Okie, dokie. And I've seen...
It sounds like he's like a Japanese businessman or something.
And I've seen the screenwriter comment on this. He said in his script, Doc Ock said okie dokie once. Cameron thought that was hilarious and copied and pasted it on every single line.
Because James Cameron is insane.
And
God, okay, imagine this movie did come out and it was real, and this becomes like, you know how Matthew McConaughey's on screen, you just think to yourself, alright. With your Arnold Schwarzenegger, and in your mind you just be going, okie dokie, instead of ice.
I already
cold.
do. And this leads to...
I want to live in that world. That is the world I want to be in.
Oh,
Again, you want to slide into it.
Oh, just wait. He's getting to the best part.
Oh, there's more?
And this leads to this movie's signature moment in the third act after the tragic death of Uncle Ben.
By Wiener.
Death by Wiener.
You've all
Okie
been
dokie.
Spider-Man has to chase down Dr. Octopus, who's rushing towards his lab to activate his Doc Ock machine. Spider-Man, I believe they're at a party or something that Doc Ock crashes, and then they have to chase him out. Peter puts on his Spider-Man costume. He and Liz head to a car. Dr. Octopus, despite being Dr. Octopus, jumps into a car and speeds off towards his lab. Spider-Man and Liz and Flash then get into a car themselves. Flash gets in the driver's seat. Spider-Man points and says, "Follow that Doc Ock." And then they have a car chase.
Even though they are Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus.
So Dr. Octopus is like pedal to the metal, speeding down a New York road, hands on the wheel, looking behind him. Well, Spider-Man is just pointing and sticking his hand out the window and trying to web the car. I like to point out, Spider-Man isn't even driving. Flash is driving.
Spider-Man in the back.
So he still has the webbing, but he doesn't swing.
And they just have a generic movie car chase that's written like it's the most exciting thing in the world.
You know what would make it better? If instead of Flash Thompson, it was J. Jonah Jameson, for some reason he got wrangled in and he was the one driving the car.
I can see that being a real Spider-Man story.
He's chomping a cigar, yelling at Spider-Man, but still going through traffic.
Stop backseat driving.
Web sling menace. But I think to make this even more hilarious, I'm pretty sure that in this draft, what I remember, because I read information about it years ago, Peter at this point in the film has gotten his costume destroyed or something. So he goes to a costume shop, breaks in, and steals a dime store Spider-Man costume that doesn't fit him.
Yes, I remember.
And then puts him on. So he's not even wearing the real Spider-Man suit for the third act. He's just wearing this really badly made version that doesn't fit him all the way.
Which, to be fair, is the most Spider-Man thing in the world. That was the one accurate thing they did.
God.
And that is the Spider-Man movie we could have seen when we were kids.
Dear
That
God.
was the Spider-Man. That was the only Spider-Man movie being considered for decades.
Wait. What happened to Wiener?
I believe he was killed.
I was hoping you become the Jackal.
What happened to Wiener?
What happened to Wiener? the real issue.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie. Can we end the podcast instead of saying that's a wrap, we'll just end it by all saying okie dokie in unison?
Yes.
Yes.
I love it.
And James, speaking of unmade Spider-Man movies, what you know about the canon film Spider-Man?
I know, like, vague details about it. I don't know what that movie was actually going to be.
Well, I think you have a story about what it ended up becoming, right?
Oh, yes. This wasn't something that was actually going to be made. This is just... Okay, whenever Canon first got the rights to Spider-Man, they just... Because this was Canon, they just called up, like, a random screenwriter they had on payroll and said, we just got Spider-Man, write a Spider-Man script. The writer didn't know what Spider-Man was, so while he was on an airline flight for not even an all-nighter, just a couple of hours, he pumped out like a 100-page Spider-Man script that's about a dude who transforms into a giant spider and is killed by the American government. And he shows up at Canon's front door. There's your Spider-Man script. Please pay me in cash.
Money, please.
The most canon story of all time. Also, you can totally find the teaser trailer to Canon's Spider-Man on YouTube.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. The motion picture.
Wasn't it just like a still from the comics and then text? Like a Ramita Spider-Man shot and then it just like zooms in?
No, there was a dude in a Spider-Man costume running around on the Canon logo.
Yeah, it was, it was like him, like, floating in space doing a Spider-Man pose or something. It's really weird. I think they vaguely used, like, some kind of Superman font, if I remember correctly. But I think it was called Spider-Man the Motion Picture.
Hey, it worked for Superman.
Yeah. I wish they would name things like that more often. I miss the motion picture.
It worked for Star Trek. It worked for Superman. It's a very 70s idea, but it should come back.
Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, the motion picture.
I like how they're using that for musicals now, like Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark, the musical. They can get away with it there, but they can't do it in movies.
Multiple colons.
Why is Spider-Man the single most raped character in comics?
Because he's Spider-Man.
My favorite part is when he takes off his mask and it says damaged and webbing across his forehead. I'm not going to let that go because it makes me so mad.
Yeah, you shouldn't let it go.
Also, it's a terrible font. They picked like the worst possible font to put on there. They could have been creative with it at least.
How dare you use Comic Sans?
It wasn't even that. It was like something like a Shelby Allegro. But come on, like really? Be creative here. That's like a basic font you can get in Microsoft Word. Pick something different. Typographers can find something cool.
We're talking about movies that actually aren't happening.
Sorry. All right.
Not movies we wish were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's one thing I've been fascinated with by years: the Jurassic Park script they wanted to make with genetically altered dinosaurs that were dinosaur men. For years I heard about this and I just assumed it was a myth. It's like when you hear about alligators in the sewer. But then, last year, concept art leaked for this movie. They had gone far enough to draw pictures of Triceratops men standing up and holding guns.
There's script reviews for it.
This was a thing that came dangerously close to happening. Now, I understand Jurassic Park 3 was not a smash success, and not a lot of people think it's great or amazing or even good, but I don't know how you go from Jurassic Park 3 to saying, what if we made an X-Men movie with dinosaur people?
I'm curious.
I will tell you how we get there. The fourth movie. Because the fourth movie always has to be the most insane of the franchise.
Yeah.
Like, think about Jaws of the Revenge. The shark became psychic.
I'm curious, when was Jurassic Park 4, like, when was that being talked about?
I think it was actually originally being talked about as a Jurassic Park 3.
Because all I can think of is, if this movie actually came out, it would have literally broke the 90s. Like, we would have reached maximum 90s at, like, 1998, and the decade would have just rolled over to 2000.
There's some sort of dial somewhere that's dangerously close to 2000. There's a whistle going off.
We're moving the 90s clock.
What I love
it closer to midnight.
What I love is that just reminds me of Super Mario Brothers.
Except for that one actually happened. Somehow they let that one slip.
One fascinating thing, though, about that fucking movie was it would have used the shaving can
Yes.
that was hinted at in Jurassic Park, though then they would have then removed that plot halfway through it. It was just a red herring plot. It's like, you thought this was going to be a thing? Nope, we just crashed somewhere and we have another plot happening.
See, to me, the most amazing part is, and at this point when we're recording the show, Jurassic World has not come out yet. But it looks like from the trailers they have taken at least the germ of this idea and transplanted it into the plot for Jurassic Park 4, because there's a genetically engineered dinosaur. And I'm just going to spitball, and I bet the super duper big twist of the movie is it's got human DNA in there somewhere. The I-Rex,
My God, they've learned to feel.
I bet the I-Rex will have some sort of human in there somewhere. That's going to be like the third act twist. But I feel like the genetic tampering.
Guess that.
Yeah, I feel like the genetic tampering comes directly from this idea. Like, they looked at it and went, okay, this is batshit insane. How can we make this palatable to mass audiences who are not the Sci-Fi Channel? So nothing ever dies in Hollywood. It just kind of mutates.
I am incredibly disappointed that movie never happened.
I would have loved to see it, but I would have been very disappointed.
The insanity of it. Like, the main base was recessed into a mountain somewhere. Like it was a fucking James Bond movie circa 1967.
Wasn't there also like a gang of velociraptors that were like a SWAT commandos or something?
Yes.
They were the special team that would fight the other dinosaurs?
Yes.
See, again, I think that was
that sounds like
translated
the best
into
movie.
Jurassic World, because now, Chris Pratt has his own pack of raptors he runs around with, and they have motorcycle races.
I highly recommend looking up, like, there was a script review on Ain't It Cool News, like, 3 or 4 years ago. And it sounds like the most amazing / stupid / good movie ever made.
Once Kung Fury gets made, I want those guys to tackle that script.
It's fair game now, right?
And all the dinosaurs, had their own personalities and could talk.
I hope they all have cool nicknames. Like, this one's
Instead,
Spike, and this one's Slash.
Instead, that was repurposed into Thaddeus Rex.
So, I mean...
So there was a Dune script you guys have been hinting at.
Oh, I guess we might as well talk about Jodorowsky's Dune.
I mean, I thought the plan was always to do an episode specifically about the insanity that was that.
We can still do that.
I don't want to double ground here. There's so many other things we could talk about.
Okay.
This is a teaser for a future episode.
Yes. That's what I want to say.
Well, I mean,
We
just
will-
cut this out.
Here's one thing I do want to talk
this.
about. When are we getting a new Creature from the Black Lagoon? Because
There was that
every
weird
great director
rumor,
out there wants to make it, and it just never happens. Carpenter was promised it, and then they're like, JK, fuck you. No. Guillermo del Toro had a version. Didn't happen.
There was a rumor, like, it came out like a week ago that Scarlett Johansson is being looked at for the Creature from the Black Lagoon remake. It's like, there's one being made? It's like,
Yeah,
well, they're trying to
apparently-
reboot the Universal Monster Universe.
Yeah.
They're saying that's going to be part of it. I don't know how. I'm not sure how you connect the Creature from the Black Lagoon with the rest. He was never part of, like, the monster, MASH movies with all the other ones. Like, there's never a House of the Black Lagoon.
Well, yeah, but people always think of those characters in tandem, so Universal's going out of their way to just shoehorn them in as like a shared universe Marvel style. It's weird.
The Black Lagoon is actually in Egypt.
I mean, you saw Dracula Untold. Do you think they're putting that much thought into this?
No.
Jesus.
Not at all.
That said, I would kill to fucking see them just remake Dracula Untold with the Gill Man.
Same plot.
You must become the Gill Man to save your people. No!
He turns into a swarm of minnows that flops down on a bunch of knights. They're gross.
This is inconvenient. This is inconvenient.
I kind of feel bad for stepping on so many living creatures, but this is
Gilman.
slimy.
Gilman has a fight to the death with Dominic Cooper.
Dominic Cooper's covering him in coins for some reason.
I want them, though, to remake all the Black Lagoon films and do them as dramatic as possible. Like, I want The Creature Walks Among Us.
Yes, my
dead
favorite
fucking
thing ever.
seriously.
The movie where the Gill Man is just a dude.
Yeah, just a leathery green guy.
Mike, you're the biggest fan of Black Lagoon that I know. Have you seen like the various concept arts of like the creature design over the years?
All through the years. And I've only mildly liked a few.
Yeah, they have gone like to such an extreme to reimagine that look, and it never really turns out well.
See,
Which is weird, because the Gillman is kind of perfect. Like, just take that design and not have it be rubber.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
A lot of people really like the Monster Squad Gillman. I still think that's... I mean, it's a cool monster design, but it's not the Gillman.
See, that was my problem with it. I like it. It's a cool fish monster, but it doesn't scream Gillman to me for some reason.
No, and they always try to make Gillman look terrifying, which I think they're missing the point.
Well, they're also trying way too hard to make him look like a sci-fi monster to me. Like, they make him look inhuman shaped,
Yeah.
which is like he's the Gill Man. He's not the Gill Toad or whatever you're trying to go for.
You gotta keep him slender and agile and kind of beautiful looking, because he's just an aquatic creature that happens to be monstrous because he's like a pan. That's about it.
Yeah, he's a,
Sapien is the closest I've seen to seeing like that kind of aesthetic applied to that kind of character.
Right?
Yeah.
If they just put scales on Abe Sapien, that would be, like, perfect.
Yeah.
Although I guess it's not that scary if you've got a fish face like that.
I'm also all for them adapting the book Times Black Lagoon. My favorite horrible book sequel thing.
Wasn't that the one with time travel?
Yes. They use an iPod to time travel, and there's
Sorry, could you back up? I thought you said something that didn't make sense.
they refigure. They use an iPod to create a time machine to go back in time. That's where they meet the creatures from the Black Lagoon, which are the ones that don't talk that we saw in the original film are evil, and then there's ones that do talk, who are good and are vaguely Native American-like, and they live in huts. And there's all this weird mystical stuff where you can be like under mystical water that's above ground and go on spirit journeys.
The last of the Gillmen.
This was written by the creator. Was it not?
No. It was written by a guy who's done a lot of movie tie-in books over the years, though.
I thought you had said that it was like from like the original writer or something.
No, I don't believe so. Maybe been involved. I don't remember. It came out like 2006 or 7.
If I can run a slight
And
tangent here,
have not.
is it just me? Because I mean, maybe I'm out of the scene for too long, but has the movie tie-in novel died out?
Yes.
Which is a shame, because I remember as a kid always being super excited for, like, the movie tie-in, and then being disappointed when it was nothing like the movie, or just a crappier form of the movie. But I still was always excited for them.
yeah, I think it died out like the moment you realized internet gave you just as much of what you wanted out of it. Because basically what you bought the tie-ins for mostly was to get spoilers for the movie.
Right, yeah. I read the Spider-Man tie-in like a week before I saw Spider-Man.
Yeah,
That always baffled me so much, because it's like, do you just refuse to enjoy things? It's like, no, I want this movie spoiled for me in a book form.
As a kid, yes, you can't wait for things.
Yeah, I totally am on Cody's side with this, because I would always get like the comic book tie-ins if it was a comic book movie, or I would get like the novels if it was a movie I was really looking forward to. Like, I didn't care about spoilers. I wanted to know as much as possible.
All right. Or sometimes there's stuff in movies that they don't explain. Like, I think the X-Men tie-in explained what happened to Sabretooth, like after he gets blown off the Statue of Liberty.
Well, it's Chris Claremont.
Like, there's actually one of the things I distinctly remember from a movie tie-in was the Spider-Man novel starting off with a sequence of Spider-Man in the graveyard, like foiling robbers, like grave robbers, and then talking to Uncle Ben's gravestone, and that's how it starts. Like, he narrates the whole thing.
There's also fascinating things where you just see the stuff that didn't make it into the final film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite movie tie-in thing comes from Chris Claremont's X-Men 2 tie-in, which the actual screenwriters were so taken with, they talk about it in the commentary. Which is the origin of Magneto using the metal balls to escape. Like, Claremont wrote this entire flashback sequence about how Eric had to in the concentration camps, he had to make ball bearings for the Nazis. So that became his signature weapon when he became Magneto.
Actually, yeah, that's pretty.
Which I still say
good idea.
I still say they make canon in Days of Future Past.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
that actually does seem like they're referencing that again.
It's always weird to read the movie tie-ins for certain comic book movies, because they're usually done by the same 4 people. If it's DC, it's either Marv Wolfman or Dennis O'Neil. if it's Marvel, it's either Peter David or Chris Claremont. I still have the Superman Returns novelization by Marv Wolfman.
I remember owning the Death of Superman, a novelization by Roger Stern, which always confused the hell out of me. It's like, so it's just the story without the pictures?
Yeah, I have the Batman Nightfall novelization by Denny O'Neil, and I never understood why they exist.
Yeah,
Greg Rucka wrote
yeah,
No Man's Land.
No Man's Land. Yeah, No Man's Land, because I read that when I was a kid, before I read the comic. It was a weird experience. But anyway.
What I really remember, the Gremlins tie-in novel actually explained that the Gremlins were space monsters.
Oh, really?
Like, Gizmo has, like, flashbacks to whatever planet he came from, and he's, like, thousands of years old and very intelligent.
Wait. So they were the critters?
Basically, yes. Like, it doesn't get into a lot of details, but it's kind of like, whoa, what's going on? There's, like, point-of-view chapters from Gizmo.
Well, Gremlins critters all come from the same source, which is Night Skies anyway, so it makes sense.
Yeah. That would just weird me out. I was like, whoa, I'm learning all sorts of new stuff.
That was my segue back into unmade movies.
Too late. I ruined that.
That was a good one.
God damn it. Thank you.
All right.
Tell us about Night Skies, because this is a doozy.
Oh, God. Is there enough time to talk about Night Skies?
Well, we're about 48 minutes in.
Really?
Yeah.
Night Skies was supposed to be the sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, God. Yeah. Okay, I remember this now.
And it was going to be based on when Spielberg was doing UFO research, it was based on a particular story that he had heard. And it was this weird, like, horror film set on a farm where aliens are, like, trying to figure out. These really fucked up aliens are trying to figure out what the sentient life on Earth is, so they're going through all living things. So they just start terrorizing a family in a farmhouse.
That's the only way to learn from them, by scaring the shit out of them to analyze it.
And I don't remember a lot about it, but it's fairly dark as hell, which Spielberg has a weird... Spielberg does this again with E.T. too, which I'll go into. But there was one little plot in there about one of the aliens not being bad and befriending the boy who lives on the farm. And when Spielberg was shooting Raiders of the Lost Ark, he was reading it to, I think, the script supervisor or something, like he was reading the treatment, and she just said that he should just do like that one plot as a movie, because he was lamenting the fact he kept doing things with like Nazis and evil stuff. So he just turned Night Skies into E.T.
Why not?
And then go on.
Oh, no, I was about to say the thing you're about to say.
Yeah, and then he, I guess, reused ideas from Night Skies when they asked him to sequelize E.T. for E.T. 2, Nocturnal Fears. My favorite title.
Because E.T. was begging for a scary follow-up.
Which I think Spielberg started writing this before E.T. came out, and like he decided very quickly what a horrible, horrible idea this was. Where it was like Elliot and his, like, apparently was an intergalactic war going on between E.T.'s people and some other aliens who come to Earth because they've tracked E.T.'s signal, capture Elliot and his friends and torture them on like the spaceship, and E.T. has to come back and kick ass. Somehow that retard has to save the world.
E.T. barreling down the hallways of a ship full of lizard men, like blasting them with his finger.
And I think Steve Johnson actually did the designs for Night Skies, but that design became E.T. And I think there were some legal issues because E.T. was just a non-grimacing version of the aliens from Night Skies. I think they got in some legal trouble because I think they used it without his permission or something.
By the way, now all I can imagine is the Magneto escape from X-Men 2, but it's E.T. like shooting Reese's Pieces at aliens. Ta-da. Going home from hell.
Oh, man.
I like the idea of him slowly becoming more articulate, but only by like a couple words.
He's morphing to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You right here. He jams his thumb into their chest. Elliot can feel his bloodlust. It's turning him dark.
The thing that fascinates me about Night Skies, though, is that when Spielberg split it off, he split one part off into E.T., and then the other part became Poltergeist. But I appreciate the cannibalism of that script.
It's like his See You Next Wednesday. It's like fucking John Landis got decades of movies out of that one fucking script he wrote. Which apparently was just the universe in a script. I'm still curious about how that works.
Hey, do you guys want to hear about a batshit Godzilla movie?
Yeah.
Yes, always.
I didn't
All I
actually.
want to hear about.
I don't know if you guys know this I didn't know this existed till sometime last year. Did you know in 1983, Fred Decker wrote a Godzilla movie?
No.
Oh my god, really?
The first American Godzilla movie?
Wait, yeah, I did hear about this. Wasn't there like a cracked article that was talking about it?
I think so. There was a big article in Ada Cool News like late last year because they like at a convention. I think it William Stout and Dave Stevens did the concept art for it. Stout like put up a projector and showed concept art and went through the entire plot beginning to end. And it would have been directed by Steve Miner, who had just done Friday the 13th 2 and 3.
Because, after you do a slasher film, you're ready for the big league with monsters stomping cities.
Well, he just done a 3D movie with Friday the 13th 3.
That's
and
true.
Godzilla would have been in 3D.
Oh, man.
At last.
3D movies from the 80s are the best. I just love any movie where you just have something intentionally pointed at the screen for about 5 seconds. My favorite hobby is sitting down and screaming 3D.
And Rick Baker was building an animatronic Godzilla head.
Yes.
I think Dave Allen was doing he was creating a stop motion Godzilla to use. So this is an early 80s stop motion Godzilla.
Oh my god.
And the hero of the film, his name was Daxton. That was it. And he was like this Snake Plissken-esque dude with an eye patch. And everybody has to go look up this article about this movie. It's fucking amazing. And look up the concept art. There's concept art of Godzilla blasting the Golden Gate Bridge with his atomic breath and crushing evil Russian guy in the palm of his hands. Yes. The Soviets were villains of this script because it was the 80s.
Because 80s, of course.
So,
darn it, Drago!
I'm curious, what was the title of it? Just Godzilla?
I think it was Godzilla 3D.
Because of course.
The beginning.
Because 80s.
I think Godzilla is born in the beginning because this nuclear satellite falls out of the sky, or misfires missiles or something. So NASA diverts it and blasts into the sea. And you see it sink into the depths and gets darker and darker, and it's Godzilla 3D fades up on screen.
I like how the original was a statement by the Japanese on American warfare and nuclear, the atomic bomb and all that. We took it and made it about the Russians creating monsters.
So appropriate.
So, the third act sounds like it's just so 80s. Because it takes place on Alcatraz Island. Because Godzilla has taken up a residence there.
He's got a nest.
And the plan is fucking Daxton flies in on a helicopter with a nuclear missile. And his plan is to shoot into Godzilla's mouth so it explodes inside his own stomach, killing him. But in classic 80s movie fashion, Daxton has a kid. And his kid has bonded with Godzilla.
No.
Yes.
Yes, they're outsiders and shit. But
how does a 3-foot-tall child bond with I'm assuming several hundred-story lizard monster?
Okay, there's reason for this. You see, Godzilla comes across Daxton's kid at one point, but Daxton's kid has a pet iguana that he carries around on his shoulder. And he sees that there's a human who's friends with a lizard.
Maybe he just wants the lizard in the kid's baggage.
And Godzilla is touched by this.
This was going to get into the pathos of Godzilla, his humanity.
Godzilla had feels.
So Daxton's kid doesn't want Daxton to kill Godzilla because they're friends, but he sees Godzilla killing innocent people. So he's left with no choice but to use his bond with a giant lizard to distract Godzilla, giving Daxton a clear shot to fire the nuke, killing Godzilla.
No.
Wouldn't that also, like, kill the child?
No, because once again it fires into his mouth and blows up inside of him.
So that contains all the
Godzilla
radiation?
contains all radiation, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So Godzilla's the safest bomb shelter out there. Like, if there's a nuclear
Yes.
holocaust, you hide inside Godzilla.
I assume that's what they did with his corpse.
Mr. President, get in Godzilla!
Godzilla spleens. Get your Godzilla spleens here.
Anyway,
Fresh out of King of all monsters.
We should send this idea to Guillermo del Toro for Pacific Rim 2. Like, people are hiding inside kaijus.
And watch it never get made.
And
Don't say those things.
God, and like all good movies that never happen, another movie came out of this, which is House. So,
What?
well, Steve Miner went on to direct House, written by Fred Decker, and they met because they were working on Godzilla. So that's how House got made.
House is the alien to this Dune.
Yes.
That's incredible. And because of that, we have House and House 2, the second story.
The greatest subtitle a movie can have.
And speaking of Godzilla movies, there's not a lot of information for this one, but this is my favorite unmade Godzilla movie. And until I heard that one, but this was like back in the 90s, and they were planning on making Godzilla versus Ghost Godzilla.
How would that work?
It's okay. It would have brought supernatural elements into Godzilla. This was reboot 80s Godzilla too. This was like 94, I think. And it would have been like OG Gojira, like coming back as a ghost and like slowly like getting a corporeal form. But he would have been like a ghost Godzilla and battling like the current Big G.
That scientist died for nothing.
At the end of the movie, the Scooby-Doo gang unmasks him as just old man Godzilla Jenkins.
He's still a giant lizard. He just has
With a ghost costume over top. He's trying to scare away the other Godzilla to get some gold that's buried under Tokyo.
And the only reason this didn't happen, not because it was too crazy or weird or surreal or anything, it was just because he had just fought Mecha Godzilla and Space Godzilla. And the director was like, I don't want him to fighting another Godzilla.
It could be a trilogy.
That's the reason it didn't happen.
Wow. Speaking of insane movies, I'm just going to cover one more because I could talk about comic book movies that have failed all day and all night, including The Batman, which was the 1984 Tom Mankiewicz draft, which I've read and featured the Penguin, the Joker, Rupert Thorne, Robin's origin, Silver St. Cloud, and giant typewriters in the third act.
It's the twilight of the superheroes of comic book movie scripts.
Amazing script.
I have never wanted to see a Batman movie be made more in my life. But I could talk about that all day. I could talk about Aronofsky's Batman Year One, which was also
With Big Al.
co-written by Miller, which was basically Batman without money and living out of a mechanic's garage.
It was just Imagine Batman.
Hobo Batman Strikes.
I could talk about Batman versus Superman from 2002, which featured a clone of the Joker as created by Lex Luthor to use Batman to come out of retirement, because he's in retirement at this point, to kill Superman for him.
This is all sounding familiar.
Did Frank Miller write all of these?
I could also talk about Justice League Mortal, which was actually going to happen.
Don't remind me.
Or Robert Smigel's Green Lantern. But the creme de la creme for me, aside from Superman Lives, because that's the weirdest comic book movie that would have ever been made, the movie that I'm fascinated by the most is called Superman Flyby.
Supnacan.
Yes, it is referred to as the Supnacan draft by J.J. Abrams. Now, to give you a little bit of history, Brett Ratner was commissioned to do a Superman movie in the early 2000s. Ratner dropped out, and McG took over.
Oh, God.
While this was happening,
It's a confederacy of dunces.
J.J. Abrams was commissioned to do a draft, and here are his quotes on what he was by the way, these quotes are from last year. what he was trying to accomplish with the draft, which was the thing that I tried to emphasize with the story was that if the Kents found this boy, Kal-El, who had the power he did, he would most likely have killed them both in short order. And the idea that these parents would see, if they were lucky to survive long enough, that they had to immediately begin teaching this kid to limit himself and not be so fast, so strong, and so powerful, is that the result of that psychologically would be fear of oneself, self-doubt, and being ashamed of what you were capable of. Extrapolating that to adulthood became a fascinating psychological profile of someone who was not pretending to be Clark Kent, but who was Clark Kent, who had become that kind of a character who is not able to or willing to accept who he was and what his destiny was. The idea in the movie was that he became Superman because he realized he finally had to own his own strength and what he'd always been. That has absolutely nothing to do with the draft. Because here is what actually happens in the script. Krypton is besieged in civil war between Jor-El and his brother Kata-Zor. Before Kata-Zor sentences Jor-El to prison, Kal-El is launched into space, to Earth, to fulfill a prophecy. Jor-El also specifically picks the Kents to raise him.
They missed this golden opportunity. I'm sorry, just to interrupt. But there was Jor-El and his brother who's not named Mor-El. Come on. It writes itself. Okay, sorry.
At some point after college, where there's a scene where Clark meets Lois Lane, and like all the characters are introduced to each other, like Jimmy Olsen's there and all that, he has to stop a plane from crashing, like much like in like the John Byrne comics, and he reveals himself to the world as Superman. Which brings about Kata-Zor's son, Ty-Zor, and 3 other Kryptonians who arrive on Earth. Superman is defeated by them because of the Kryptonians' knowledge of ancient Kryptonian martial arts. The reason this was in the script was because Warner Brothers told Abrams, we just made The Matrix and we want to see that last fight in Revolutions done right. So Superman eventually succumbs to his injuries and dies. And Jor-El, who, by the way, is still alive.
Yeah, Krypton is not destroyed.
No, not at all. Krypton is still perfectly intact. Jor-El commits ritualistic suicide. He essentially commits seppuku. And both meet in a Kryptonian version of heaven. Superman is then resurrected by the prophecy because he is the chosen one, the last son, who defeats the Kryptonians. The movie ends with a cliffhanger where Superman enters a ship and journeys out to find Krypton. And here's the kicker. Lex Luthor, who would have been portrayed by Robert Downey Jr., finds an alien ship of unidentified origin. It's assumed to be Brainiac, but I don't think that much thought was put into it. He finds an alien ship, merges his DNA with it, and an alien entity takes over. And during the third act, he reveals that he himself is Kryptonian.
Dun, dun,
A Kryptonian Lex Luthor.
Who, by the way, in this movie was a CIA agent.
What?
Yes, he was a CIA agent. Also, in the third act, Superman fights a giant mech in the streets of Metropolis. And when he's going to fight the mech, he pulls out a tin can that has an alien liquid that transmorphs into a living costume. Superman is wearing a symbiote.
And
He just
Superman
wants
was also-
brains.
Superman was also going to be bald.
Yeah, something like that. Like
When he puts on the costume, his hair disappears, and that's his secret identity.
Shouldn't it be the other way around? Like, when he becomes Clark Kent, like he puts on a wig?
And that was J.J. Abrams' take on Superman.
Guys, I just love how Warner Brothers notes for every version of Superman they've been trying to make since the mid-'90s has been, he has to die.
And they finally got it in Superman Returns.
And you can tell that's just, can you kill Superman at some point?
I just love how Singer finally had to just give them what they wanted, and that's the reason he doesn't die in Man of Steel is because they already got what they
Exactly. They got it out of their system, so he's allowed to live.
For now.
But I just love that because it's like it's the worst sounding pitch for an Ultimate Superman that has ever existed. And I would have loved to see that made because it's just such a delightful little train wreck. Like, everything about it screams early 2000s. Everything about it screams origin film gone wrong. Like, it's just, and it would have starred like either Brandon Routh or Henry Cavill. Like, it's amazing. I love the idea of it just having been there, and there would have been a suit in a can.
I just love how our best hope for these bad movies never happening is that they sit in development hell long enough for people to snap out of whatever decade they're in. Like, holy shit, this is 90s. That's not gonna work.
Pretty much.
Well, the one I've always waited to see. Remember years back when Freddy vs. Jason came out?
Yes.
My sister saw that in theaters, and I didn't get to go because she was going with her friends. It wouldn't make sense for me to come along. So she came back, and I just grilled her like I needed to know everything that happened. And online, there were all sorts of rumors like, at the end of the movie, there's a hint that Pinhead's involved. So, you know, I was pumped. And then I heard a description of like, that sounds like it could have been better. But I was still fascinated by the idea of a sequel. Like, where would they take it? Would they bring in Michael Myers? Would they bring in Pinhead? And then all the rumors started swirling that they were going to bring in Ash from the Evil Dead series.
Yes.
And it would have been the greatest. Just imagine, every Versus movie that comes out inevitably has bad guy 1 fighting bad guy 2. The lesser of the bad guys kind of teams up with the human, or the human just takes out both of them. But there's never a clear winner in the two title characters. It's always some third party that does all the heavy lifting at the end. This time the third party would have been Ash, and it would have made perfect sense. You want to see Ash kick everyone's ass.
Wasn't there an actual like first draft of that?
There was. You can go out and read it. They did eventually turn it into a comic book series. Like there's Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, and I think they even made a sequel to the comic. So
Yeah, and Steve Niles is actually involved in that.
Yeah, so you can go out and read the whole thing. I'm really surprised they didn't go ahead and do it. If I remember right,
you know why?
Sam Raimi, didn't he turn it down at the end because...
No. The producer, because I thought that's what it was for the longest time, but the producer did a podcast interview a couple of years ago, and he was talking about getting Freddy vs. Jason made and then pitching Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, which he thought was never going to ever be a thing, but so they just went out and asked Bruce Campbell for the hell of it, and he was totally into the idea.
It would have been great. And parts of the script were hilarious, like they're driving around on a ice-covered crystal lake that's shooting geysers of blood.
It would have ended with Ash putting Freddy's glove in his rearview mirror, but it fell apart because it was going along just fine. The script was being made, like things were being looked at, but it didn't have necessarily official green light yet. But it hadn't gotten to the point where it could be greenlit. Yeah. But the script was being worked on. Everything was going perfectly good. They were maybe looking at a couple directors and other stuff, and then. So you remember, Bubba Nosferatu and the She-Vampires?
Yes.
You know
Another movie that should have happened.
You know how that just came out because Bruce Campbell just disappeared from that? Same basic thing. He just called up one day and went, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore.
Oh, come on, Bruce.
And they couldn't do anything with it anymore because they didn't have Ash, so it just died immediately. And so much time had already been invested in it, no other sequel could have been made after that, and it just disappeared.
Yeah, he had to go do burn notice.
The story I always heard was that Sam Raimi was trying to protect the character rights because he said, well, if I ever want to do an Evil Dead 4, it's not going to make sense if there's a Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash.
I think Raimi had issues with it, but Campbell had said yes and was totally and gave them the go-ahead to work on it and said he would be in it.
It seems almost like they're using some of the ideas, too, in the new Evil Dead TV show. Because I remember in the script there's a part where, like, Ash teams up with, like, a couple teenagers, and there's a giant fight in, like, a grocery store. I'm not saying that's going to happen scene for scene in the new TV series, but from the sounds of it, Ash teams up with two younger people. And I'm assuming, who knows, maybe we'll get lucky and we'll have a fight in a grocery store.
Well, we can hope.
They have to.
Right?
I know the thing that's always fascinated me the most about that script is simply the fact that it took place in wintertime.
Yeah.
Which you never see in slasher movies.
But that thing we've always wanted to see in slasher movies, though.
Can you imagine fucking Jason stalking around a frozen Camp Crystal Lake? Just blood all over the snow.
But the dramatic score would have been less dramatic because you just realize it's his boots, like, crunching the snow.
Well, then he's dead. He would have just froze.
Yeah.
But actually,
I
that
never
was
stopped him before.
Friday the 13th 2, the sequel to the remake that never got made, would have taken place in the dead of winter and snow for that very reason.
You know a sequel's never going to happen if they promise it'll happen in the snow.
Yeah.
I was watching
Except for Empire Strikes Back.
I was watching Memories from Camp Crystal Lake or whatever it's called, the documentary, the good one. That wasn't the.
My name is.
His name is Jason.
Oh.
I was watching the good one, and it's fascinating to see how long the idea of Freddy versus Jason was actually pitched. Like, it came up as early as 1983.
Yeah, like there were hints in some of the movies between them, but they started kind of
Not
as Easter
1983,
eggs.
1987, because 1983, I think one of them was actually, like, just getting off the ground or something. But 1987, like, they were already doing concept art of, like, the ending with Pinhead. Like, there's literally a concept art shot of Pinhead, like, intervening between the two and saying, like, let's have a chat or let's have a discussion or something like that.
Yeah, that was the original ending for the movie that actually happened, but they didn't have the rights.
Besides that, it'd be a hell of a hard thing to write. Like, how do you put Pinhead in with those guys?
How does he fight anybody?
He just shoots a bunch of chains at him over and over.
Yeah.
Yes.
It'd be the same
keeps
problem as
ripping
the
Jason
first
apart.
movie. Jason would kill everyone, and Freddy and Pinhead would just kind of sit back, making quips.
I also love how extensively they tried to rope in Michael Myers, even though there was no way they were going to get the rights away.
The Freddy versus Jason that almost got made that's always fascinated me was the legal thriller. That was about Freddy suing Jason.
Would it still have, like, the Korn soundtrack?
God.
Oh God, we could do an entire podcast on Nightmare on Elm Street movies that never got made.
Jesus.
Number of prequels?
The Peter Jackson one? Oh.
The Dark Knight
wait,
Returns of
hold
Freddy
up.
movies.
Peter Jackson was going to do a Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yes, it
Do
was
tell.
gonna be amazing. Like, it was gonna be this really meta sequel. I think this was this meant to be like 5 or 6?
This was 5, I believe.
Where, like, Freddy was this burnout has-been of a serial killer. And kids were, like, Elm Street had gotten wise to his game. So all the teenagers were ganging up on him. Like, they were taking, like, the hip thing on Elm Street to do was to take sleeping pills, go to the dream world, and beat the shit out of Freddy Krueger.
This just sounds depressing.
And, like, the whole movie was, like, the Dark Knight Returns for Freddy. It was him becoming Freddy again and making Elm Street afraid of him.
Instead, we got the Frighteners, which I'm not complaining about.
And I'm all for the Frighteners.
I think even some maybe concept art exists for that. I don't remember. I wish they talked more extensively about that script specifically in that documentary. Oh, there is so many unmade Elm Street films.
One that's always fascinated me in terms of horror is an unmade Hellraiser. I believe it was the unmade Hellraiser 3 that I only know about because Grant Morrison talks about it in the Arkham Asylum trade. Because as he was writing Arkham Asylum, I believe he had a roommate who was tapped to write a script for Hellraiser 3. And it was basically going to be Alice in Wonderland in Hell.
Oh, yeah.
With, like, Pinhead as, like, the caterpillar. Like, he was going to be a young lady's guide through the world of hell.
But where's the space?
Hey, Space was 4.
To me, that just sounds like a retread of 2, weirdly, but he's helpful instead of antagonistic.
It was apparently going to be very, very fantasy-based. It was, like, going to be very, like, hauntingly beautiful.
Was Julia a factor?
Well, she was supposed to be speaking of things that never were, I've always been fascinated by the fact that Julia was supposed to be the villain of the Hellraiser franchise. Just think, we could have seen Hell World, Evil Goes Online, with the poster of Julia's face surrounded by code. We could have seen Julia's face in the column for an entire movie.
God.
We could have seen the remake where Kate Blanchett plays Julia.
Don't even.
God. Hey, speaking of batshit crazy sequels that never happened, how much does everybody here love Gladiator 2?
Oh,
Written by
yeah.
Nick Cave.
Nick
Yes.
Cave.
I've never heard of this.
Oh, you are in for a treat.
Tell him a story, Mike.
Oh God, I can't even. There's no way to even do this justice. Like Maximus is resurrected by this supernatural, godlike entity named Mordecai, and they play with his visions in the first film. But now his visions are filled with thunderstorms, and his children and wife asking for help. They're somewhere in the afterlife, and it's getting bad. So Mordecai takes him on this journey, trying to so he can find his wife. It's like how much is in the afterlife, how much is in the real world? I'm not entirely sure, but and he goes to a temple and meets with all the Roman gods who are there inside, and he confronts them, and they tell him there's this other Roman god who's essentially go off. They're trying to make there only being one god. So go kill this rogue god. And it's all about Christians being killed and all this. And his son's brought into the plot, and Lucius from the first film is brought in as the villain. And he has to go kill this rogue god, but then he starts, fighting for the Christians, and it's the ending is amazingly retarded. Where it's he rolls up to the Colosseum and all this with this army of Christians gonna fight for them. They battle, and there's this huge battle in a forest and all this. And it ends with him they win the battle, but he says something but they'll return. And he reaches down, he grabs dirt from his hand, and he stands up. And as he stands up, he's in this white armor with a red cross on his chest. And he's leading battle in the Crusades. And then it fades from the Crusades to World War II. And he's storming the beaches of Normandy. And then it fades with a helicopter behind him, and he's in a jungle holding a flamethrower, and it's Vietnam. And then from there, we fade into a sterile bathroom in the Pentagon. And Mordecai appears behind him in the mirror, and he smiles at Mordecai, and he walks into the war room of the Pentagon, which apparently is made to look like the one from Dr. Strangelove. And he sits down in front of a row of laptops, and he asks, "What's next?" Credits.
Why didn't Ridley Scott make this instead of Exodus?
Ridley Scott was all for this.
He was on board.
Yes, they
Why
all
didn't he
were
make this?
100% on board.
The studio, I think, was the one that saw it and went, wait, no, what?
They were like, no.
Oh, please,
No.
please make. Why didn't he make this instead of Robin Hood? Why didn't he make this instead of Exodus? This is amazing.
By the way, I just like to repeat, this was written by the musician Nick Cave of Nick Cave with the Bad Seeds. Nick motherfucking Red Right Hand Cave.
Who is actually a great writer, but what a wacky idea.
The man who gave us Let Love In wrote us time-traveling fantasy sequel to Gladiator.
I don't really have a story attached to this next one or anything. You guys probably actually remember more of it than I do, but that just reminds me of the Terry Gilliam Watchmen.
Oh, yeah, I was going to bring that up before.
Where the plot is Veidt goes back in time to prevent Dr. Manhattan from ever coming to fruition, and that leading into the plot of Watchmen.
Sort of the plot of Watchmen.
Yeah, sort of.
The ending is still my favorite thing ever.
Yeah, where the superheroes teleport into the real world and see copies of Watchmen on book stands.
Yeah, they essentially saved the world by erasing superheroes being a real thing. So then they find themselves in Times Square in the real world, and Watchmen is just a comic book.
Terry Gilliam jumps out and shouts, "What a twist!" And then the movie ends. Also, Time Bandits begins exactly at the credits, so you don't know what's happening.
Which I will say, as weird as that is, I kind of can see the train of thought that led to that. Watchmen is about superheroes in the real world and how horrible and disastrous that is. So, the next level of that is the Watchmen superheroes in the actual real world. It's still weird and dumb, but...
And not particularly good either. You can find the script online.
To be
I mean,
fair,
it's
most of the
interesting,
versions of
but-
Watchmen that were written sound terrible.
Even like
Yeah.
David Hayter wrote a version, and like
Well, wasn't there one where Night Owl like hits a button and it makes the owl ship come down and crush Ozymandias, like
yeah.
in an act of revenge?
Well, there
And
was,
there's like concept art of Dr. Manhattan. He had like this weird deformity, like in the back of his the back of his head was like a huge lobe.
I was fucking speaking of Dr. Manhattan, our joke of earlier of whenever Arnold plays a comic book character, he's a scientist. Who's fucking gonna be Dr. Manhattan in one version?
Which I'd be all for.
Yeah, I would. Oh,
Oh,
It is too late. Always has been. Always will be.
very
Too
disappointed.
late.
Very disappointed.
Oh, fucking.
nothing ends. As he says as he snaps Ozymandias' neck.
Fucking speaking of Arnold, though, probably my favorite unmade movie, and I'm still mad this isn't happening. Though I guess this one isn't happening, but something with that character is King Conan, Crown of Iron.
Conan. Wait, no. I thought they were still. Aren't they doing like
they're doing-
another Conan with Schwarzenegger?
Legend of Conan, yeah, but it's not. I mean, Crown of Iron was Milas writing it.
Wasn't like also this ended up being some weird vehicle for Sorbo? Like wasn't that originally
Disappointed.
wasn't that originally going to be a Conan 3 and then they like apparently Arnold didn't want to do it and they just gave it to Sorbo who didn't want to play character who pre-existed.
That might have been something that happened with it after it died. It died because the only reason it died was because Arnold became governor or decided to run for governor.
Oh, okay. This is like a much earlier draft than I'm thinking of.
Yeah, this was actually 2001.
Oh, wow.
This was because Warner Brothers had just gotten the rights then and immediately got Milas to write a new script. And it was like the Wachowskis were producing it too.
And I think like, wasn't Rodriguez gonna potentially direct it?
That was after Arnold dropped out. Rodriguez signed on. But that was like so briefly because it just died.
Then led to that Red Sonja movie he didn't make.
But that was like I remember you can find this was back in the awesome time of the internet where there was no security at the movie studios. So there's like script reviews for every draft of this script that was like it ever came out. It was immediately reviewed online. Like the original one is some like 160 page epic that spans like 25 years. I think he eventually got down to like 130, but it was like old Conan teaming up with his son, battling rebels and shit. Vin Diesel, I think, was going to play his son named Khan. Mako would have been in it too, I think. Like, oh, it's one of my favorite things. Crown of Iron.
What could have been.
We're getting like a version with Legend of Conan, but it's not the same.
Especially now that Arnold's really taken a turn as far as age goes, because like, there's not enough movie makeup in the world to make him look the way we picture in our heads, like King Conan.
And how metal is that title, too? King Conan, Crown of Iron.
I feel manlier just hearing it.
This is true.
And a
You
direct...
just want Dragon Force to provide the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's just a direct goddamn sequel to Conan the Barbarian. Just Milas just crazying all over the page and oh god.
I love that Miles was still involved too. That like that would be one of my dreams.
Speaking of unmade movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, this segues perfectly into the greatest unmade comedy of all time.
Is it Wayne's World 3?
Close, actually.
Shrek 9.
Close, actually.
Coneheads 8?
Stop making jokes.
Sorry.
That wasn't even a second Conehead. Shut the hell up,
In
Cone.
my mind, there is.
The Conehead cinematic universe.
All Coneheads all the time.
Luke Evans as Conehead.
Conehead Untold.
This would have been 1993's Hans and Franz in The Girly Man Dilemma. My favorite title of all time. The Girly Man Dilemma. Which would have been a musical about Hans and Franz meeting their hero, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was going to play himself as well as co-produce. And this was going to be about them moving to Hollywood and with Arnold and the three of them being best friends. And it was going to be a musical. And the script was written by Phil Hartman and Conan O'Brien.
Oh my god!
Why doesn't this exist?
But no,
And it was going to be, it was going to be like this weird meta film about how stupid this idea was as a movie. Like, there was going to be a running joke where it would cut to Siskel and Ebert reviewing the movie and pointing out how ridiculous and pointless this all was. And then eventually, like halfway through, Hans and Franz would come in and kick their asses. And the reason this did not happen was because Schwarzenegger pulled out at the last minute because the Last Action Hero bombed.
So he was like, I better rethink this shit.
I need to do something safe, like Twins.
Let's say, like, wasn't that right around the time he did Twins?
I'm sure you could actually convince him to do that now.
Oh, he'll do anything.
What the fuck?
And you can definitely convince Harvey. Yeah,
Hans and Franz are still on TV. They're doing ads all the time.
Yeah, you can still
They
convince
still
him.
do the voices.
The Siskel and Ebert thing might be a little tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just CGI.
I was thinking Weekend at Bernie's, but that works.
I just love the fact that it was going to be a musical.
Because why not?
Arnold singing.
Oh, God. And that's years before the YouTube sensation. It's fascinating to look at all of the unmade Saturday Night Live movies. Like fucking Robert Smigel and Bob Odenkirk wrote a Superfans movie. Which wasn't made because of the disastrous 1995 SNL year, which had them just cancel all planned Saturday Night Live movies. Mike Myers pretty much tried to get every single character he ever played on Saturday Night Live as a movie.
There was going to be a Dieter movie?
Yes, a Dieter movie, which was going to co-star Jack Black, Will Ferrell, and David Hasselhoff. That was all about Dieter going on a spiritual journey to find his pet monkey. Which like led to one of the biggest studio fights in movie history, because he ended up pulling out because he didn't like the script, and was sued by Universal Studios for $3 million and by Imaginator Entertainment for $30 million, which led to him countersuing, and Steven Spielberg had to step in and mediate. And the agreement they left him with is the reason he starred in The Cat in the Hat.
Like it was a punishment?
What a twist!
Like, we will let this all pass if you make The Cat in the Hat.
So Mike Myers destroyed his later career because of that?
Yes.
It was their fault?
Because of the Dieter movie.
Oh, if only he played the love guru on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd make more sense. That was his passion project.
Was he planning to do a Lothar of the Hill People movie? Because that's what I'm dying for.
Yeah, I would have loved that. Entire movie about the first time he walked with woman.
Okay. Was there ever a Caveman Lawyer movie being planned?
Isn't that what the Geico Caveman sitcom was?
Oh, Jesus, I forgot about that.
There was somehow going to be a Coffee Talk movie.
How?
To be fair, this was a world where It's Pat and Stuart Saves His Family were movies.
You got me there. I thought Roxbury became a movie somehow.
I just want to point out Stuart Smalley got a movie. The movie that's more obscure than It's Pat. The movie's so obscure, it technically doesn't exist.
I'm still lost at Coffee Talk movie. Like, how would that have translated?
Now, this is an interesting one, because if they had made this, fucking asses would have been in seats. Adam McKay and Robert Smigel were going to make The Ex-Presidents.
God,
Mike needs to go change his pants.
that was my favorite thing ever growing
What?
up.
Let me kill Buttercup. Here's the bitch one.
Oh my God.
Forward smash. To be fair, they did take their script and turn it into the Ex-President's graphic novel.
Now, was it going to be animated, or would it have been
Yes.
live action?
Oh, it would have been animated. They had a proposed budget of $3 million. It would have cost them nothing.
Oh my God.
God, that would have been amazing.
And
Well, thanks for making us all sad.
oh, I still have one more doozy for you. Going back to weird Saturday Night Live musicals that were never made, in the far-off land of the late 70s, in a thick mist of cocaine and Rick James's sweat, the rising star known as Eddie Murphy belted out the screenplay for Buckwheat the Musical.
What?
I can't believe this exists.
Well, that's the problem. It doesn't.
Eddie
Would there
Murphy.
have been a ballad called Ote?
Yes.
Oh,
Eddie Murphy and Rick James wrote a Buckwheat musical.
Oh my God.
That was all about Buckwheat becoming a world famous recording artist and succumbing to the vices of Hollywood. And I remember one of the only details about the music Murphy ever said was there was going to be a love ballad called I Love You But I Can't Pronounce Your Name. Because Buckwheat was still going to be Buckwheat. And the reason this was not made, the only reason, because this was at a time when Eddie Murphy could get literally anything made. This is the dude who gave us Party All the Time. The reason this wasn't made is because Eddie Murphy realized that Buckwheat was a pre-existing character and he didn't have the rights to him.
Oh, darn you business.
The same reason we couldn't get that Italian Spider-Man series from the Danger Five guys.
Well, then we got Danger 5, so that's okay.
I just like the idea of Eddie Murphy and Rick James just coked up like nobody's business. Like, yeah, we're gonna do this fucking Buckwheat movie. It's gonna be huge. Wait, didn't Buckwheat exist before we did them on Saturday Night Live? No, I don't know, man. Just write it anyway. And his girl likes to party all the time,
Just plays on loop for days as they're writing.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
And on that note, I don't think I can bear any more disappointment. I'm going to call that a wrap for tonight. Is everyone okay with that? I know we all have 1,000 other dream projects that are somewhere festering in development hell, but we can't talk about them all.
Hey, we get to realize this, or not.
Ooh.
Well, look, we all agreed there's only one outro that we could do for this. All of us in unison.
3, 2, 1. Oh,
Okie
dokie. That was... So you can find our podcast on many avenues. We are on the Facebook.
So Facebook.
The blog is the blog's good. The blog is. That's the Facebooks. Internet, you can find it on internet.
Checking out the other podcasts on the Podcast Network.
Pop Nightmare, get to the Pop Nightmare. Blow the Bible bit.
Du ist Spider-Man. My Spider-Man, no!
Wo bist du, Spider-Man? Anyways, get the hell out of here. Good night. That's a wrap.
And like that, he's gone.
I have one box office pulp guy joke to make.
Okay.
Box office pulp wishes he was aborted.